We're going to continue now with the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, going to section or chapter 4, which we just read from the famous Taoist master. Now, I have, of course, as you know, several books on this, and I've chosen certain ones. This will be called Tao 4 2, and it will be in the Tao folder. Now, this one here that I have is 6 complete translations, as you can see. 6 complete translation, and you see there who some of the translators are. So what we're going to do today is look at Lionel Gills and Isabel Myers among all of those in there. So what we'll do first is with Gills. Now the thing with Gills, what he doesn't do it by chapter. He does it by ideas. In other words, for example, if you had a Bible and it was in chapters, but you had someone do it as in ideas, you would have a different order. So he does it the same way here. And in one section, which he calls Tao in its transcendental aspect and in its physical manifestations. Now, notice that already. 2 different things going on at the same time: transcendental and physical manifestations. Now, in that section, when he comes to this idea of Tao in relation to divinity, he has this to say. This sentence is admittedly obscure, and it may be an interpolation. Lao Tzu's system of cosmology has no place for any divine being independent of Tao. On the other hand, to translate it by emperor, as some have done, necessarily involves us in an absurd anti-climax. Now, you'll notice this. Lao Tzu's cosmology, according to this writer, has absolutely nothing to do with divinity independent of, Tao. It's not independent of Tao. And also, the way to translate that word, and I'm going to get into more of this later, but this gives us a clue of where we're going. Notice to translate it as emperor. Now, in the Chinese language, emperor is a godly status in the society. So you can see how that word might be used, but he says that's not correct. So when we get to others, we will do what they see as translation. Now we're going to go to Miss Myers here and read hers. This is quite interesting. It says, it appears to be everlasting in principle. I do not know whose son it is. It existed before God was manifest in form. Now, notice the difference right there. It existed, that he means the Tao, existed before God was manifest in form. Therefore, that implies that if God was not manifest yet in form, then God could have existed in a non-form entity, which is much like the Tao itself. The Tao can take on many forms and do many things, but in itself, it does not have a form. And also, as I've said before, it has no beginning and no end. So you see, again, you will notice how translations make a huge difference. And what we get from Myers here, this idea of divinity in our terms and the Tao, Evidently, there is some relationship between the Tao and the divinity, but before it had a form. Now, do we think of God as existing before it had a form? Good question. We'll continue more with this soon. This will be number 2 in the Tao folder.